Hi everyone, and welcome to another local transfer show on Football Talk podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. I mentioned transfer show. It is a bit of a transfer show today, as we will be talking about certain rumors that have been circling today. Plus, we'll also speak about what was presented in Arne Slot's press conference earlier this morning. So let's start with the news that definitely got my attention, or the rumor, I should say, is regarding Upamecano. Now, the current rumor is that Liverpool are scoping out the signing of Dayot Upamecano from Bayern when his contract expires in the summer. He'd be a direct replacement for Ibrahima Konaté should he decide to leave. And the source was Build, of course, the one from Germany. So my thoughts on this rumor, initially, I thought, no way. Upamecano for me is not the caliber of player that we should be targeting. All those years back when we were linked to Konate, some fans were expecting us to go for Upamecano because he was the more popular, or the defender that everyone thought had the higher potential. But in hindsight, I feel like we picked the right defender out of Red Bull Leipzig in the end. And a few years later, it looks like we're trying to, you know, replace Konate if he decides to leave with pretty much a poor man's version. I don't mean to be rude when I say that. Um, and since he's left Red Bull Leipzig, and when he's, of course, once he's joined Bayern Munich, he hasn't really elevated his game any further, in my opinion. He's actually looked a bit more error prone. He's not, of course, elevated his game in that kind of way. He's been a bit part player in recent times. Still, pretty much does get selected for the French national team, which is an interesting one. But for me, I don't see it as an upgrade or even quite like for like in terms of the quality. If Konate decides to leave, but of course the sort of the positive aspect of this news or this rumor is that he would come on a free transfer, which would of course occur next summer. So on paper, a free transfer wouldn't be the worst case scenario. Um, but having said that, I wouldn't want him to be a direct replacement for Konate. If he was to come into the squad as third choice, that might make a bit more sense. But regardless of that, I don't think he should be a player on our shortlist. We're not broke. We can't afford to sign a defender, so we don't really need to look at the free transfer market. I know you got the likes of Real Madrid that do that, but that's because that's part of their tactic, and they end up paying quite heavy when it comes to sign-on fees and wages. But at the same time, they're targeting elite talent that have contracts running out. So for me, I wouldn't put Upamecano in that same bracket. I think he's a decent defender, but I feel like if he was to join Liverpool, I think he'd struggle in the Premier League. I think the pace and intensity of the league would be a bit of a shock to him. He's probably better on the ball than Konate, if I'm being honest with you, but he is quite erratic. He does, you know, create sort of danger out of his own sort of wrongdoings as well. So for me, not the player that I would want us to target. But let's see what happens. As the months go on, maybe he is a target for us. I've also heard that Real Madrid are looking to shortlist him as well. They've got a few players I think that might be departing next summer, so that might be the reason why they're trying to sign one or two centre backs for the foreseeable future. So for me, not the quality that I want us to sign. Um, uh, but let me know in the chat what you guys think. Would you take Upamecano on a free transfer next summer? Is he the right caliber of player that we should be targeting? Let me know in the chat. Just got a comment here from Ozan. It's a big up the man, Ozzy. Big up yourself, Ozan. Come back. Thank you for your comment. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, now let's move on. And speaking of um, the player that he might replace, if you believe the rumors, is Ibu Konate. Now, the current rumor, no real sort of change or shift in narrative. Uh, the current rumor is that Liverpool have tried numerous attempts to renew Ibu Konate's contract in August, but it looks to be a difficult task currently. Real Madrid have a very good relationship with Konate's agent, and they'll be free to speak with him in January. So For me, that doesn't bode very, very well because, as I mentioned previously, Konaté is a player that can sign a pre-contract agreement from January onwards, especially if it's a team outside of the UK. Of course, that gives an open invitation for the likes of Real Madrid and maybe even Paris Saint-Germain, who have shown interest in the player over the years. So for me, it's not boding well because from our point of view, we've tried to negotiate on numerous occasions, but we just haven't found the ball mark sort of meeting point where both parties are satisfied with the terms. I think he tried to present a salary of 200K, which I think the club are willing to sort of up or increase in terms of their offer. But I think there's other add-ons and other features in the agreement that isn't quite satisfying Kanate and his rep. So I think there will be ongoing talks going forward. But does that mean there's going to be a conclusion where Liverpool, get the player on a new contract? I would love to say yes, but for me, my gut feeling is that I don't see it happening. Konate just looks like he's pretty much, you know, swayed to join Real Madrid. I think, with the strong French contingents at Real Madrid with the likes of Mbappe, Camavinga, Tchouaméni, just to name a few. With those players over there, I think he would be more than happy to join and maybe have a fresh challenge in La Liga, and of course play for one of the Spanish giants, which of course many players aspire to do in their careers. So for me, it's not good signs for Liverpool. I don't see any positives from these rumors. Even when you get a rumor that suggests that, oh, you know he's not completely sprung on going to Real Madrid, he's still willing to talk. I don't know. There hasn't been a shift in the narrative. It feels like Real Madrid are very heavy in their pursuit and they want to try and get their man at all costs, especially after the news yesterday that Saliba has signed or has agreed a long-term contract with Arsenal, and he would have been regarded as a prime target alongside Konate. Maybe they'll plan on having those two as a duo in their team, and with one player committing to their current club, the emphasis is more on the other one, which is Konate now. So for me, it's not positive in terms of the speculation. And when January comes, we'll get the clearer picture. But right now, I don't think we're getting anywhere closer to coming to any agreement with Ibu Konate, and I don't expect us to anytime soon. So fortunately, bit of a negative sort of tone there regarding Konate, but I just have to be honest, I don't see him staying at the club, and I think this will be his final season at the club. Now, moving on, I did want to touch on something. So, of course, with Real Madrid, um, having a sort of philosophy of signing players on a free transfer every summer, I thought, maybe have a look at the possibility of signing a centre back that would, be available on a free next summer. So here are a few names that I have come up with. So these are 15 players currently that have less than a year remaining in their current contract. Of course, the top three, we all know Ibu Konate, currently our player, but I think he will end up joining Real Madrid next summer. Upamecano, I my initial reaction would be no. I don't think he's as good as what people think, or he's at a high level. I think he's a very erratic defender. He doesn't present that calmness in the backline. So for me, it wouldn't be a signing that is required in our squad. And a Marc Guehi, for me, is a must signing, a player that we should try and get, not next summer, try and get him in the January window. John Stones, on his heyday, fantastic player, but he's more injury prone than Joe Gomez. So that probably says or speaks more volumes than not. Then you've got Marco Senesi, a decent player from Bournemouth. I'm not sure if he's Liverpool quality. So for me, I'd rule him out. Antonio Rudiger, a player who, of course, is Premier League proven playing for Chelsea, but the current rumor or the current speculation is that he's expected to move to Saudi next summer, which I expect as well. Eric Garcia, for me, not good enough to play for Liverpool. Christensen, sorry, Harry Maguire. I just left him out of the picture completely. Never in a million years would we sign him. Christensen, for me, past his best. Not really Liverpool quality, in my opinion. Webster, decent defender as well. I just don't think he would, pose a threat to the current crop of players. And I don't think he's at the quality that we need at the club. Tarkowski, hell no, not an option at all. Nicolas Sule, a player that has such huge potential, a few years back, but with injuries and poor form, and I've seen pictures of him where he's looked really overweight, so he's lost a bit about himself. So for me, not a viable option for Liverpool. And Ure Alvarez, uh, he's definitely not an option. I did a bit of research today and realized that he's actually been found guilty for a positive doping test, and he's expected to be suspended for 12 months. So yeah, regardless if he was elite or not, which I don't think he is. Um, yeah, he's not signing for Liverpool after that kind of suspension. Fabian Schär, good defender. He can score a spectacular goal here and there. But I don't think he's the profile that Liverpool will be looking at. And Emre Can, I don't expect to see a return for the former Red there. So no, out of these options, the only one that I would like us to go for is Marc Guehi. Upamecano, I'm not quite so sure, but if you're in favor of that, let me know in the chat. But for me, that is not an option at all. Just gonna go through some of the comments here. That says, "Big up Aussie. Is it just one match for Higo? Also, do you think Isak gets a full game tomorrow? It is one match suspension for Ekitike. It was a second yellow, so it's an automatic suspension rather than it being a free match suspension. So no, he's only out for the next fixture, which is of course tomorrow against Palace. In terms of your second part of that question, Isak, I don't think he'll play the full 90 minutes. I think he'll play around an hour, and we'll probably bring on, depending who gets selected, maybe either Chiesa or Gakpo off the bench. So I think that will be the option going forward. I was like, kind of saying, Emre Can, I know he's got a few months left, so no, definitely not an option for us. That's it. I watched Lucho before Ozzy played good again. Yeah, he's looked sharp for Bayern since he's joined them. It's one of those ones where I've said it in the summer. I didn't really want us to sell him, to be honest with you, just because of what he brought to the table last season. And people say, well, he's only had one good season out of three or four, maybe, but you have to put context into that situation there because he picked up a big injury um, in his second season or his first full season, I should say, because he was a January signing. But last year he was one of our best performers, played at left wing, which is of course his normal position, but also played up top as well and made a huge difference for us in our campaign last season. So I would have liked him to have stayed, but I don't think it was a football decision in terms of why he was sold. It was more so, a financial decision from the club where they didn't want to spend or they didn't want to offer him better terms because of his age and profile. So that's why we pretty much cashed in on him. So for me, it's not really, we didn't think he's not good enough. I think the club really rated him. It's just that they have metrics where they feel like we can't really offer someone of 29 years of age, a bigger salary than what he was requesting for, and therefore, unfortunately, we have to part ways with him. But yeah, he is doing well, um, and it's ironic because our left wing position doesn't look as secure as it has done over the years. So yeah, unfortunate, but hopefully, Liverpool can move on, and maybe you've got the likes of Chiesa that can come in, or you've got young Rio, who makes a name for himself in the coming months and years, hopefully. So yeah, hopefully we've got someone to look forward to going forward. I was gonna say Reece Williams will be on the bench again, Ozzy. That is that is absolutely wild to even say it out loud. But yeah, it's a fact, isn't it? He will be a centre back option because you've got Joe Gomez that will be on the bench, but then we'll probably need another body um, for our defense because you've got Joe Gomez, who I guess on paper would cover left back and right back. So therefore, you need another centre back cover. And yeah, Reece Williams could be that guy on the bench. So who knows? If he comes on, he'll get our support, of course. But yeah, I think that ship has sailed. If I'm being brutally honest, that says I will start Rio tomorrow. I wouldn't start him. I think it's too soon to start Rio at this stage. I feel like listening to Arne Slot's words as well about Rio, where he said that of course he's got a new contract, professional contract, which is of course very good, but he needs to work hard. He's got the likes of Chiesa, Gakpo, Salah, top wingers in world football right now. He needs to look at them as role models and learn from the best and dedicate, you know, his life, dedicate, everything to be at their level, and not to think that he's just made it because he's got a new contract and he's amongst them. He needs to work hard to surpass them, if that makes sense. So for me, I think it's too soon to do that. I think there's other players that are ahead of him in the pecking order, but what he brings is something different on the pitch for us, which is you've got a player that is someone who's got raw pace. He come on and change the game in that kind of manner. So he could be more of an impact player going forward right now. Once he learns the trick of the trade and then feel like he's ready to cement a place in the starting lineup, then he will be given an opportunity. But right now, I think it's slightly too early to start Rio for Liverpool. Ozan says, I think we barely get by again tomorrow, Z, but claim all 3 points. I hope so. I really do. 8 for 8. Yeah. I think hopefully, we can get the points tomorrow. It's going to be difficult. It's not going to be a walk in the park by any stretch of the imagination. Um, Two teams unbeaten in the league. They haven't been beaten in the last 17 games in all comps. The last time they lost was in April against Newcastle, which was a whitewash of a 5-0 defeat. Since then, they've bounced back and they've been really strong. So, yeah, it's not going to be an easy game for us at all tomorrow. But we'll see, how the team is set up. And hopefully, Liverpool can get the W at Selhurst Park tomorrow. Now, speaking of Crystal Palace and Selhurst Park, Marc Guehi, of course, we'll be facing him tomorrow in the fixture. But there's been some sort of speculation surrounding um, our pursuit for the defender, of course, and also I don't believe there's any truth to this, but a bit of his reaction in regards to the move that failed to materialize on transfer deadline day. So the source was Paul Joyce. He pretty much tweeted to suggest that Liverpool will not try to sign Mark Guehi in January, as it is not their approach to pay a significant transfer fee 5 months before he's available for free. Liverpool's strong hope is that nothing will change in his mind during the season and he will move on uh, to join them next summer. And there's also been another source, it's not reliable, so it's called Football Insider. So, they're probably as reliable as I am, if I'm being honest with you. But they suggested that Mark Guehi reportedly blames Liverpool for the collapse of his proposed transfer this summer and is now determined to join Real Madrid instead. Now, on my thoughts, I'll start with the latter. I think that's complete nonsense for this outlet to suggest that that is what Mark Guehi said. I don't buy that at all. Um, the move failed to materialize because of one person, and that was Steve Parish, not Liverpool. Liverpool got everything done in terms of agreement for the transfer, his wages, the contract was pretty much laid on the table. It just needed to be signed, but we weren't given the green light to conclude that. He even passed the medical, so for all I know, he's probably done media work where he's had interviews and photos taken and all that sort of stuff. So I don't buy that. I think that's complete nonsense. Whether he's still hoping to join Liverpool, I don't know for sure if that is the case. We can't, predict those kind of things because the situation has changed a little bit now. Everyone is aware that he's going to be a free transfer next summer. So maybe you got the likes of Real Madrid and uh, Bayern Munich was linked to him as well. These kind of clubs might be in pursuit to try and sign Mark Guehi next summer. So there's no guarantee that Liverpool will be the team that he definitely joins. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, I would suggest that he's probably favourites to still join Liverpool at some point. But in terms of what Paul Joyce tweeted earlier today, I'm not pleased if that is the stance from the club, that they don't want to pay a significant transfer fee 5 months before he's available for a free transfer. I think you have to look at the current climate. We don't have enough centre backs in the squad. We've got three established names in the likes of Konaté, Virgil van Dijk, and Joe Gomez. Konaté and Joe Gomez have had injury issues in their recent careers. So we can't take that gamble. You know, what if Joe Gomez picks up an injury, which unfortunately, touch wood, doesn't happen, but it is a possibility. You know, we don't have cover, and I'm not having Reece Williams. I'm not having Endo, and I'm not having Bajcetic as my backup cover. For me, that's not acceptable for Liverpool Football Club. We should have plenty of options to come in and, you know, take over from these kind of situations where players are not available. So for me, Liverpool have to do what they can to try and get him through the door. I do agree, though. I don't think we should, you know, pay a significant amount to sign him. Truth be told, I would probably bid 10 million and would say, look, that is what you deserve for what happened on the last day of the transfer window. Um, you know, we agreed 35, you dropped the ball, and that's why you haven't got the money in the end because they were willing to do business. They don't want to lose Marc Guehi on the free, but unfortunately, that could happen if Liverpool decide to play this game. But if I'm Liverpool, I think it's probably time to swallow your pride and just bid 10 million. I wouldn't even go higher than 10, 15, honestly. That mid 15 would be the max I would go. And if they don't accept it, then look, then I get it. Maybe we try and sign him as a free transfer instead. But that doesn't change the outlook of our team or our squad and maybe even our season. We need to sign another centre back. So if it's not Mark Gay in January because we want to sign him in the summer, sign another body, sign someone else. You know, there will definitely be players out there. Unfortunately, we'll probably have to pay a premium price, which is why I've said just go for Mark Gay instead, pay 15 million, 20 million, whatever they're asking for. And you know, you've got a player that can come in and literally make the difference right away and maybe even improve us going forward, you know, from a technical point of view, because I do think he's a better ball playing defender than Konaté. So I really, really hope, you know, Liverpool don't have this stance where they're like, we're not spending any money in January. We'd rather wait until next summer. I hope that is not the case. That might have been the initial stance after the window closed, but with Leoni being out for the foreseeable future, and definitely has been ruled out for the season, we need to be sensible and try and get a defender through the door. And I'm really hoping that it's Marc Guehi in the January window. So let's see how this news develops. But until then, we'll probably watch him tomorrow as we face him in the match against Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park. Now, on to another rumor. It wasn't directly linking Liverpool as such, but the rumor was that Newcastle United are amongst the clubs keeping an eye on the situation of Eduardo Camavinga as he considers an exit from Real Madrid. Now, from my point of view, if this is true and he is considering leaving Real Madrid, surely Liverpool have to enter the race to sign him. And when it comes to Newcastle, we're known to hijack their deals, or maybe one or two even more. So for me, we have to do a repeat. We have to try and hijack this deal if there was to be any truth to it, and get Camavinga because I rate Camavinga very, very highly, and I think he'd be an outstanding signing for us. You know, imagine him alongside Gravenberch, or if, you know, Gravenberch's not available alongside McAllister. I think he'd provide the right balance. Um, in terms of his technical ability, really good, left-footed, has a great passing rate. But what impresses me the most about Camavinga is his tactical awareness. He's defensively very, very good. Intercepts play very well. For me, he's an all-rounder, and I think he'd give us a different balance being a left-footed midfielder. So for me, if there is any truth that he wants to leave Real Madrid, you know, Liverpool have to be in pursuit because he would be a fantastic signing for us. In terms of transfer fee, no idea in terms of how much it costs. You know, if Liverpool show interest, of course, they'll probably inflate the price a little bit more in comparison if Newcastle wanted to sign him instead. But I would say 50, 60 minutes should be enough to prize him away. Um, but then again, some fans would rather us sign, you know, Adam Wharton, and you know, get him instead. Maybe he'd cost a bit more due to, you know, English tax and all that sort of stuff. But if Camavinga's available, I would go for him. But that would be my personal choice. So, you know, drop a comment, let me know what you guys think. Would you go for Camavinga if he is considering leaving Real Madrid? Let me know your thoughts because I think he would be a fantastic signing for us going forward. Now, in terms of the press conference that took place earlier on today, um, there was some rumors speculating in regards to Liverpool potentially um, disciplining Ekitike by deducting 2 weeks of his salary. So that question was presented to Arne Slot earlier today, and Arne said this, quote unquote, Hugo didn't get any fine. I spoke to him. He said sorry straight away to his teammates. You are allowed at this club to make a mistake without getting fined. He's young. He's a fantastic human being. So yesterday we did a show. We had Dara in the chat, who was very negative and was judging my statement when I referred to him as a young striker. Um, Arne Slot's just called him young, so maybe you'll have to, eat your words a little bit because that is exactly why I refer to him as a young striker. And let's not forget, when the Premier League presents the Young Player of the Awards, the category is under 23s. So yeah, just something I thought I'd say out loud. But in terms of my thoughts, I'm glad that's the stance that they took, and it wasn't a 2 week fine for, of course, something that was really stupid, really brainless from Ekitike. But that's not how Liverpool are. We don't punish our players for those kind of things. We've had players like Nunes, headbutt or attack someone. We don't punish him, or we didn't deduct his wages like that. Um, in this kind of thing, there's no point of um, punishing the player financially because it's not something that is, off the pitch. If someone does something incorrect or unprofessional, then that's a different thing. Of course, what he did was silly on the pitch, but I don't think it entails to punish someone financially or deduct wages like he did something crazy. It was just silly and stupid. That let's just say how it is. So for me, I'm glad that's not the stance, and I didn't think it was. Of course, the rumor was spreading yesterday. I'm glad that Armstrong cleared up today, and pretty much put that speculation to bed, because that is not how Liverpool club operate. And of course, as a coach as well, I don't see that being his demeanor to just find players for the sake of it. So he definitely would have had a chat with him afterwards, and just to say, look, you got to be a bit more smart in those kind of decisions. Maybe take a leaf out of Firmino's book where when he used to celebrate, he'd lift his shirt halfway and just put it down, and he would never get booked for it. So if you want to do that, just why don't you just do that instead? So yeah, for me, I don't think a punishment by deducting his wages was the right thing to do. And I'm glad that's not what the club did. Um, but also some good news. Al did kind of confirm it in the press conference, but couldn't officially say it. But later on in the day, it was confirmed on the local website that Federico Chiesa has been added to our Champions League squad. So of course, in terms of the reason why it's been added is due to Leoni's unfortunate injury that took place against Southampton. But from Federico Chiesa's point of view, I'm pleased that he's been added to the squad. I think he's needed. He's a viable option for us. He's going to give us a different attacking threat going forward. And I feel like the European game suits his skill set even more. So for me, I'm really pleased for him. But what's pleasing about the whole scenario, the whole situation is that you never heard anything from Chiesa in terms of throwing his dummy out of the pram or nothing negative. From what we've heard, once he was told, he was like, "Okay, fine, no problem." That was his reaction, and I feel like it just spurred him on to work hard and show his worth, and that's probably what led to that fantastic performance against Southampton midweek. So for me, he's a moral professional, and he's definitely a positive figure to look up to, especially with all the young players we've got coming through the ranks and within the current squad. You need to look up to someone like Chiesa, who is a player that is a more professional. He's going to do things the right way. He's going to work hard, and he's also going to be a mentor to a lot of them. He's going to try and help people. Even if it's someone that's at his position, like a Rio and Gamoa, that's not going to cloud his judgment or his personality. He's going to try his best to help him and guide him the right way. So for me, he's a very positive and influential person to have in the squad. I'm very pleased that he's been added to the squad. So looking forward to seeing what he does in the coming weeks. I'm really hoping that he starts tomorrow. I think he deserves it after that fantastic performance against Southampton. So fingers crossed that is the case. But if not, I do expect him to be involved in some shape or form tomorrow against Crystal Palace. I'm just going to go through some of the comments before we close the show. Uh, I was saying that's unfair. They're being official added to the UCL roster. Yes, he has been officially added. So yeah, fantastic news for Liverpool, and of course, fantastic news for Fede. Even this picture, this is the official Champions League picture. As you can see, he's got the Champions League ball on his sleeve there. So yeah, good news for everyone affiliated with Liverpool. On the comeback saying, fantastic human being like Brendan Rodgers. Yeah, Brendan Rodgers was something else. The infamous documentary we had where he pretty much shouted that Raheem Sterling. Yeah, for me that from that day I just thought this guy is just not. He's not what we expected. He's not a Liverpool caliber of a manager. Of course, we've been very fortunate. We've been very blessed with some real managers over the years. He wasn't one of them. So yeah. Um, of course, he had probably had a better time than Roy Hodgson, but probably less said the better in regards to both of their reigns at the club. Um, and then other than saying he didn't kick a fan like Cantona. I remember that, that was one. That was against Crystal Palace, wasn't it? Yeah. It's not like he did something crazy like that. And I've seen things online where people are like trying to justify him to get punished and receive a 2 week deduction of his salary. I think that's absolutely outrageous, honestly. Like, yes, he made a mistake. It was a stupid mistake. It was a very, brainless kind of moment there because he totally forgot he had a yellow card. And then later on, he was like, oh, he was too like emotionally driven. He scored his first goal in the Carabao Cup, like it's the Champions League. But I'll give him the benefit of the doubt in those kind of words. But no, I don't think it was justified. So I'm very pleased the club didn't use that stance because it doesn't send a good message either to the players in the squad. We've got a lot of young players in our squad. So if they were to make a mistake, they're going to be worried that they're going to get punished financially. Uh, and look, let's not beat around the bush. If you've look at ourselves in terms of everyday life. If we did something that was let's say we made the error with the work that we do for our jobs, and they were like to punish us, you're gonna get 2 week deduction. Like we'd go absolutely ape shit. Excuse my French, if that was the case. So no, I don't think that was justified. And some fans will be like, well, look, they're footballers, they get lots of money and all that sort of stuff. That doesn't mean anything. You gotta look at the context, you gotta look at the human being. He made an error, yes. We all make mistakes. He is a young striker, despite what someone told me yesterday. He is a young striker. So because of him being a young striker, he's going to make those mistakes. It's just part of the game. So I'm glad he didn't get punished. Look, if he kicked a fan, or you must remember El Hadji spitting at a fan, when we play against Celtic in the UEFA Cup. Those are the moments where you deduct salaries, not for a silly celebration where he's taking his shirt off and he's just forgotten about being booked from a previous moment there. So, I don't know. Some modern day fans do irritate me a little bit with these kind of point of views, but each to their own. Uh, I come back saying, remember the free in front envelope? I do remember it. That documentary, honestly, um, the showcase what a cowboy type of manager he was. He just wasn't. He wasn't. He wasn't Liverpool quality, number one. But number two, he just wasn't the right man. Like he- his ego was very inflated. Like he thought he was above everyone else. He thought he was like Mourinho, and Mourinho was, prime Mourinho at the time. Um, yeah, I thought like we just got a knockoff version, and he thought it was too big for his boots. It was hindsight probably a poor appointment. But you live and you learn, I guess. As I quite say, one of you will be on this envelope who will let the club down. Don't be one of them. I remember, yeah, and they never revealed it, did they? So I'm intrigued to see, or I'm intrigued to know who the players were that were named. Maybe it was just blank and it was just more of a mental exercise more than anything else, which I think is more so than not. Imagine actually wrote the player name like, yeah, Sterling, he's gonna be one of the weak ones, and I don't know, Enrique or Skirt or like that. That'd be an absolute P take as well. So yeah, I'm not sure about his methodology. Um, and what annoyed me about him as well, he kept on saying the word character in every interview that came up as well. So yeah, it was above definitely a player, a manager that falls, above his actual level, in my opinion. And of course, that proved to be the case, after he left Liverpool as well. Um, but that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Oz and Kabak and Daz for your comments. Appreciate your engagement as always, guys. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Now, in terms of upcoming shows, we'll try and do a watch along tomorrow. It's a 3 o'clock kickoff game UK time, so I'll try and be live from 2:55 p.m. and then we'll go through the lineup together, watch the game, and feel free to get involved in the chat with your comments, even if it's just random comments about or questions about Liverpool or anything football related. Feel free to get involved in the chat, and then we'll also do a match reaction show later in the evening to gather our thoughts, and hopefully it's good news than not. Back-to-back wins as always. So that's what we are hoping to do tomorrow. So until then, take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.